later for a podcast, so there's kind of this weird pause. Anyway, here we go. Hello, everybody. Welcome to our second ever HFES Presidential Town Hall. No matter if you're joining us live, watching, or listening to this recording later, thank you all so much for being here. HFES has invited me to moderate today. My name is Nick Roome, and I host a weekly Human Factors podcast. I'm joined today by the president of HFES, Chris Reid, and by the president-elect, Carolyn Sommerich. We're also going to hear from Blake McGowan on the Outreach Division and Committee, Mica Endsley will talk to us about the Government Relations Committee, Gary Orr on the Public Outreach Committee, and Deb Boehm-Davis on the Industrial Advisory Board. We also have Caitlin and Steve hanging out from behind the scenes, helping out with everything. We have a great town hall for you today and a great topic of conversation for you focused on advocacy and outreach. And we'll be addressing some of your questions, comments, and concerns a little bit later. But first, just want to level set with everybody on the format so everyone is up to date. We are broadcasting this live across many platforms right now, across the Human Factors Cast channels, as well as the official HFES channels. You can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Twitch, among many other platforms. And as we make our way through the conversation today, we ask that no matter where you're watching, drop your comments in the chat or the comments section, and we may address them towards the end. We'll see them all on our end, so, please let us know. This is open to everyone, members and non-members. And one last note, if you can't stick around for the entire town hall today, the event should be available to watch on all those platforms right after we're done. All right, I've gone on long enough, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Carolyn to go through some of the society announcements. Go ahead and bring up that slide deck you have there, Carolyn, and I'm going to pass it over to you.
Okay, very good. Thank you so much, Nick. And thanks everybody for joining us today. Really appreciate it. So just want to give you a few announcements from HFES. So first we're going over the agenda. I'm not controlling the slide deck. So sorry.
Slide one.
All right. So this is our slide number one. So this is, again, a welcome to everyone. These are the presenters for today. And so we can move on to the next slide. So our agenda today, I'm going to give you some basic announcements of what we've got going on in HFES coming up, things that we'd like you to know about. You may have seen in the bulletin or maybe not. So we want to draw your attention. The who we are, we're going to get introduced to everybody through our telling you about what we do in HFES, and particularly, again, today we're focused on our folks who are working in the advocacy and outreach areas. And so you're going to be meeting and hearing from them in just a moment. Next slide, please. So want to let you know that, yes, another survey from HFES is coming your way. We would like to get your input on this particular town hall, just like we did get your feedback on the last one, which was very helpful. Thank you so much for that. So this survey will be available to you to give us, provide us with feedback on today's town hall. Next slide, please. So we wanted to draw your attention to some events and member benefits, basically. We have a career center in HFES, and we wanted to draw your attention to that. If you are someone who is looking for people in the area of HFES or HFE, I should say, or if you're a member who is looking for a new career opportunity, please check out the Career Center. And we have lots of opportunities that are posted there. And it's a good way for companies to let people know that, that they are looking for people who specialize in various areas within HFE. Next slide, please. Next, this slide is basically telling you that we work on people power. HFES is powered by our members. Yes, we have staff, a few people who are paid to do this and work on HFES stuff. on a daily basis, but it's really our volunteers that keep us going. And we want to make sure that you know that if there is something that you are really interested in or passionate about, or you just want to get more involved in HFES, I am sure that we can put you to work. And it's a great way to meet other members and to do more networking, which is exactly why a lot of people join HFES to begin with. So we have a volunteer page, and you can look at the opportunities there. And of course, you're always welcome to contact us too if you say, hey, I don't see an opportunity for this, but I think this would be a really great thing for HFES to be doing. So please get in touch with us, either to look for opportunities that we have, or even make suggestions for other ones. Next slide, please. So we have elections coming up, and that is another great way to have an influence and say in what HFES does, directions that the organization takes. So both in terms of you as a member voting, and you as a member potentially putting your hat in the ring. And the first stage is getting nominated, and then after the nomination process, then we have a more trimmed down set of names that will go up for the election. We created a video last year about how the nomination process and the elections process actually works. And that's available, I believe, on our website in the Member Center. We can help you find that. But look for an announcement about the elections. There are members. There's a member at large. So we have 2 member at large positions that we fill every year, and that's a 3-year window in terms of service. There's also, of course, the Secretary Treasurer position and the President position. These are all 3-year positions in terms of being an elect, the actual position, and then the immediate past position. And I believe there should be one more slide that I'll be talking about. The slides go back up by any chance? Not sure where the other slides went down. Oh, that's not good. Okay, well, I'm going to tell you what's on that slide that's not being displayed right now. So we have awards, and we like to celebrate our members and our member achievements. And these don't necessarily have to just be for members, though. We have a number of different awards, and the way people get these awards is that they are nominated for them. So great, slides are back. So we recognize people who do great in terms of being educators. We recognize people who are innovators in our field. We recognize outreach, which is just what we're talking about today, with the Oliver Keefe Hansen Outreach Award. We have a Young Investigator Award. We have Early Career Service Award. So we love to be able to recognize our members for what they do and what they excel at. So the deadline for submitting packages for consideration for the awards is moved out to April 15th. Hopefully that's not going to interfere with you getting your taxes done. Hopefully you've already taken care of that for folks in the US. So wanted to bring that to your attention. The other thing on this slide is this year, again, we're going to be providing funding for seed grants that target the intersections of human factors and ergonomics and anti-racism, anti-bias. So please look for an announcement that should be coming out, I would think, within a couple weeks for proposals for those seed grants. And I think that is all. Oh, no, more yet. There's more. Next slide. Our events. We do have a lot of sort of major activity events. We had the Titan Symposium in February, which you can hear the recordings of that and you should listen to. We've got a lot of great people in HFES who are people who, if you don't know the records, it's really great to listen to them. We had a very successful healthcare symposium that just completed last week, and there's going to be a slimmed down virtual version of that coming up in June, which you could consider. And then, of course, in October, we have our annual meeting. That'll be in Atlanta, and we are super excited to be in person again in Atlanta. And then ErgoX is going to be following up right after that. I also want to make sure that you know that we have webinars. So these are not the only activities that we have. We have webinars that are scheduled periodically. And so please keep checking the events page so that you're aware of upcoming events and read the bulletin. Those are also announced in there too. And now I think I'm done. So Chris, are you taking over?
Yep, I'm switching in. Thanks for the tag, Carolyn. Hi everyone, Chris Reid is the president of HFES. For those who are new to Human Factors in Ergonomics or Human Factors in Ergonomics Society, just going to give a quick overview, a brief overview. So our mission, as you see up on the screen, is essentially advancing the science and practice for systems. So we're designing for people and essentially designing products or systems around people and learning about their capacities and capabilities and designing to that. If we can go to the next slide, please. Some of the highlights for HFES: we were formed in 1957, believe it or not, just post World War II. We have around 3,500 members and 25% of them are students. There are about 67 active chapters throughout the United States, Canada, and Europe, as you can see. Many of them are student chapters at the universities. 26 of our groups are technical groups specialized in those fields, from aerospace on one end to virtual and extended reality or safety, ergonomics, product design, lots of different groups that may fit your flavor. There are 76 graduate schools, 20 undergraduate schools, so lots of opportunities to continue your education in human factors and ergonomics. And as Carolyn mentioned, we have lots of events going on throughout the calendar year, from conferences, symposia, webinars, all of the above. And then today is our special topic about advocacy. So we're going to be talking about that further with our guest speakers who are coming on right after me. Next slide, please. I do like to highlight the circle of life. For those of you who've been in my speeches before on this, you know I end up pulling out the Lion King from time to time. The circle of life for human factors and ergonomics in this sense is essentially what it says on the screen. We are made up of people all over the map, from academia all the way to folks who are working in industry or government. And why that's important is because that circle of life connects us all together by producing goods and services, essentially. People, processes, tools, students in some case coming out of graduate schools, going into industry or government positions, or folks who are coming up with problems that need solutions from the government or from the industry side. And all that connects around in a circle, perpetuating through the ecosystem itself. Next slide, please. Now, why is that important? It's because of this guy right here. Since last year, we've been working on what we call our strategic roadmap, a number of different activities that we're improving not only the benefits to members of HFES, but also the benefits to those who are serviced by members of HFES. There are a lot of items on this deck. Today, you see that advocacy thread that's highlighted on there. Our folks who are on today are going to be talking about the different things that they and their committees and the people that surround them in HFES are doing. So it's a perfect opportunity to talk about what's HFES doing for you. Next slide, please. I want to say the org chart of HFES is pretty thick. You can see it's hard to see many of these, but essentially what we have are 5 divisions that make up all of the background, what happens behind the curtains of HFES. Today, we're going to be zooming in on Blake McGowan up in the upper right. If we can go to the next slide, please. Blake is part of our outreach division. He is the division chair. And Blake will be telling you today about what his group tends to do for from ergonomics and human factors perspective. So Blake, are you on?
Yeah, I'm here. Thanks, Chris.
All yours, sir.
Yeah, thanks for that great overview of HFES and as well as the roadmap. I think that's really helpful for everyone. And thanks, Carolyn, for sharing a couple important things that I just want to state again. First, if you have not had a chance to view any of those Titan webinars, they're absolutely fantastic and a great way to learn from people with tremendous amount of experience and knowledge to share. And second, from Carolyn's message, if you are interested in volunteering and helping out the committee in a current activity or something new, please feel free to let us know. And thanks, Nick, for driving this bus today. For those of you that I haven't met, as Chris had mentioned, my name is Blake McGowan. I am a certified professional ergonomist, and I am the division chair for the Outreach or Advocacy Group. I have been a member of HFES for over 20 years, but this is my first time being part of the executive committee, and I started in November, so I'm very, very new to the executive committee as well as the committees in the outreach group. I probably classify myself as still in that learning phase. I'm not sure if I've progressed to first grade, but I'm definitely still in kindergarten, so I hope to share what I can today. As the outreach division chair, a lot of my role is communication between the committee chairs as well as the executive council, and making sure that there's good awareness of what's going on. And one of the primary purposes of this group is to educate our members as well as the public and community on what HFES has to offer. And the other one is sometimes often overlooked, is just to engage with practitioners and not always have to provide an exact solution, but start the conversation. Today, I wanted to provide a very high-level overview of the Outreach Committee. There's 9 different subcommittees within this group. Some of these committees I've had some engagement with, some of them I haven't. They are all doing excellent work. I just wanted to share with you, and I'll have to read some names off here and titles so I get it correctly. Again, with the 9 different committees, we will be hearing from 3 really exceptional committees today and answering questions on all 9 committees. But the first committee in our group, and maybe Nick, if you want to share the zoomed in view of that PowerPoint, it gives people something to follow along. But there's the white paper committee that develops white papers led by Ram Michaela. The public outreach committee that's obviously focused on outreaching to the public is led by Gary Orr, and we're hopefully going to hear from Gary today. The National Ergonomics Month Committee, led by Michelle Robertson, is a great way to highlight ergonomics over a full month period. Government Relations Committee, led by Mica Endsley, who you will hear from next, talking about all of the outstanding activity that that group is doing to get human factors and ergonomics in the conversation and in view of our government agencies. The Industry Advisory Board, the IAB, is led by Deb Boehm-Davis, and you'll also hear from her today. The 6th committee is the Representatives and Liaison Committee, led by our President-elect Carolyn Sommerich. And one of the important things with that committee is the number of relationships that we have with different groups. I don't recall the exact number. It's more than 10, but less than 30 groups that we're interacting with to push our content and help other groups, as well as share HFE with a broader population. The 7th is BOSI, led by Emily Roth, and a combination of, it's focused on kind of getting HFE in the view of a lot of engineers and systems engineers. Chris Reid leads the International Ergonomics Association representation, and I think there is an upcoming webinar between the two groups. And lastly, the Societal Impact Group led by Andrew Thatcher. I think it's one of more of the newer committees, and there's a tremendous amount of opportunity to share the impact of HFE on societal issues. And things that come to my mind are things like sustainability, why not climate change, and things like the opioid crisis. There's so many opportunities there. So hopefully people are interested to hear from the experts from these committees. As I mentioned before, please feel free to ask your questions in the chat. We're looking for an engaging session. And lastly, if you're interested in volunteering in the outreach division or others, please let us know. We're more than happy to have you. So at this point, I have the pleasure of passing the ball over to Mica Endsley, who leads our government relations committee. And you'll quickly learn that there's a tremendous amount of activity, but more importantly, a tremendous amount of important activity going on in that group. Mica?
Thanks, Blake. So I'm in charge of the Government Relations Committee. As most of you know, a large amount of the work that human factors professionals do is affected by the government. This is anything from direct purchasing by government agencies for their operations. For example, Department of Defense, Homeland Security, FAA, they all have to let work out to industry contractors to build systems for the government. They also have a big impact on regulations. So things like the certification of aircraft by the FAA, certification of medical systems by the FDA, workplace safety regulations under OSHA, or approval of nuclear power plants by DOE. All of those operations of products are regulated by the government. The government's also involved in funding a lot of direct research that our members provide, from everything from National Science Foundation, AHRQ, and then all of the agencies that I just mentioned. We also see a lot of legislation that affects academia, STEM, and related kind of efforts. And then the government gets involved in a lot of new and emerging areas. So we're seeing a lot of queries and things from like artificial intelligence, remotely operated and autonomous vehicles that are being put on roads and aircraft systems, for example. And all of these have huge implications for human factors and the work we do. So the goal on our committee is to provide government decision makers with the best high quality human factors and ergonomic science as an input into their decision-making process. Most legislators and agency decision makers aren't experts in human factors and ergonomics. Many of them have simply never heard about it. And so we spend a lot of time explaining what human factors and ergonomics is and its value for system design. We try to translate human factors and ergonomic science into policy that can inform their legislative and decision-making processes. And we try to make sure that human factors and ergonomic science gets included in requirements and regulations that are being developed to go into their operations. We do this first by creating policy for the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society. It's not just my opinion or somebody else's opinion, but really what we do is we form committees of the experts in a particular area. They meet and talk about, what's the best science on a particular topic and what sorts of policies do we really need to be promoting to help achieve our objectives in those areas. That gets reviewed and vetted by a number of experts. It goes through this committee, and then it goes to the Human Factors and Ergonomics Society Executive Council to get approved as official policy. And if you look on the HFES website, you can see a number of those policy statements that have been approved. We have a brand new one that just got approved on telework, for example. We have a policy on autonomous and semi-autonomous vehicles that are being used on highway transportation that just got updated. You will see one on energy and the environment, electric vehicle infrastructure, reducing the deadly use of force in law enforcement, AI in healthcare, human system integration, airline seating, occupational ergonomics, pandemic preparedness, and we're currently working on new policies for space and healthcare. As examples of some of our activities, we have been providing advocacy on some new funding initiatives, for instance, supporting funding for National Science Foundation and OSHA, supporting new legislation to improve funding for STEM and diversity and inclusion in STEM. We've also provided response to pending legislation and agency activities in a number of areas. So we provided inputs on automated vehicles, things like the AV START Act, the DOT Automated Vehicle Comprehensive Plan, and their plan for automated vehicle technologies. We provided inputs in the healthcare area for the new healthcare ARPA agency that's being created, and in RFIs on how the government can better prepare for the next pandemic. We provided a number of inputs in artificial intelligence, things like the National Security Commission on AI and the National AI Initiative, as well as AI principles for the Department of Defense. We provided input in the aviation area. We were able to provide congressional testimony on the 737 MAX 8 accidents in 2019 that led into the new Aircraft Certification Reform and Accountability Act that had a number of provisions for improving human factors and ergonomics in aviation certification. So it increased human factors hiring and training within the FAA, it improved safety oversights, it made sure that human factors people were included on review teams and were better integrated in the certification process, and it improved funding for new areas of research in the human factors area that are very pertinent to aircraft safety and automation in particular. Another big initiative we had was that of human readiness levels. Holly Handley, one of our science policy fellows, led this up, working with Judy C. to create a new standard on human readiness levels, and that's guiding a lot of our outreach work that's going to impact DoD operations and others. So with that, I'm going to turn it back to Nick, but that's just an example of some of the things that we're currently working on.
Hey, Nick, I don't know
Nick?
if you're coming on or if you want me to go ahead and get going.
Nick's on mute, Gary. You think you better go ahead.
I'll just go ahead then. Okay. You had your chance, Nick. So I'm on the Public Outreach Committee, and I chair that committee. And if you're on this podcast and you don't know what human factors is, you're not alone. There's a lot of people who don't. And that's one of our real challenges, is to try to make sure that we get the word out about what we do, and that we are inviting people to come in and join. It's a large net. We have a very big tent that we have for people, lots of different disciplines. And so I'll just talk about some of the things that we do in public outreach. And hopefully some of those might be interesting to you, and certainly invite you to come and join us. One of the things that we have spent a good bit of effort in is trying to look at STEM events around the country and join those. For a number of years, they had those here in where I am. I'm in Washington, D.C. We had the largest STEM event in the U.S., and we would participate in that and explain to mostly about later elementary through high school and their parents what human factors is all about, and a lot of interest. Obviously, a lot of people not aware of what we do. And at a STEM event, a lot of the kids that are there are interested in physics and some of the more fundamental engineering disciplines. And when they hear about human factors, their eyes light up like, oh my gosh, this is something pretty interesting to us. So that's something that we do as those events come up. We try to get into those events. The other thing, we were having a conversation that we're going to start picking up is at the annual conferences Carolyn had mentioned coming up. We used to try to get some of the more public leaning papers and research out into the public, and we're going to pick that back up again, so that we can have contact with the press. And if the press has some interest, as Michael was talking about, a lot of the information that we're researching has public interest. And so looking at what some of the current research is, I think would be interesting to the press and people that are developing articles in those areas. I think, as Chris had mentioned, one of the areas that is within our group is the National Ergonomics Month, and that's October. And used to, that event was kind of concentrated on what the outreach, that mostly at the university level, what they were doing. They had different activities that they would do both within their departments, whether that was an engineering department, psychology department, And sometimes that would be campus-wide. So there would be like a campus-wide event, and they'd participate in that and explain to the other folks on campus what human factors was all about. But Michelle Robertson, as Blake had mentioned, took that over a few years ago and has really expanded their outreach and what they're looking at, and much more than just the month now. While they still try to coordinate what the college level is doing and both reward what's going on at the college level and encourage sharing at that level, they also have some other interest. One of the interests is to try to look at the materials that teachers in K through 12 might be interested in that would talk about human factors. What we've learned is those teachers have a need for information, but it has to be packaged in a way that is comparable to the way that they present material at that grade level. So NEM is looking at those, trying to understand how to package material that might be appropriate for those different age groups. The other thing that group is also looking at is HFE issues in healthcare. And a lot of people are looking at that. I think Carolyn had just mentioned that there was a conference that just concluded on that. But I think trying to provide some outreach materials to that particular group. So that group, the NEM group, is very, very active. And shout out Titan Endsley, if that name sounds familiar, the daughter of, and she is very active. And they have a good group of folks, very, very interested. They meet. I think they meet on a bi-monthly basis to talk about projects that they're working on and updates. So that certainly would be a lot of activity if you're interested in those particular areas. So those are some of the big things that we have going on. From time to time, we have projects that come in. A couple of years ago, there was a video contest, explain what human factors is in a short video. And so we headed up that project to get those videos both ranked and then to provide awards to the winners of those. So as those projects come up, we certainly get involved in doing some public outreach there. So, as we were talking about putting together what we're doing, some questions that came to my mind for you is if as you think about public outreach, what is it that people would want to know about human factors and ergonomics? And so to try to help us focus, where should we be spending our efforts and moving in that direction? And obviously, different groups of people are going to have different interests. So, we talked about the student participation, K through 12. There's going to be those people in college. There's going to be the young professionals out there. And there's going to be people who are mid-career and later career. So all those different types of age groups certainly have some different information needs. So as you're thinking about public outreach, I'd appreciate your thoughts on some of those questions. And Nick, I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you. Is my mic working now? Because it's really hard to host a panel when the internet keeps dropping out.
You are working. You are loud and clear.
Thank you. All right. We're going to pass it over to Deb. And thank you, everyone, for dealing with my internet service provider issues today. They're going to get a sternly worded letter along with the service that we're using today. So, Deb, I'm going to pass it over to you so you can let everybody know about the Industrial Advisory Board Committee.
Great. Thank you so much, Nick. So the Industrial Advisory Board Committee is actually the newest committee in this domain. Has existed for less than a year. And therefore, we don't have lots and lots of accomplishments to share like Micah and Gary were able to share. But as you heard from Blake and from them, we're reaching out to the public, we're reaching out to the government, we're reaching out to other societies. But we were missing a connection to industry. And so to that end, Reid established this committee, and he actually asked Andy Amata to chair it. Andy unfortunately couldn't make it today, so I'm just filling in for him. Now, the goal of this committee is to make our discipline relevant by ensuring two-way communication between industry leaders and our society. Now, as an applied science, we need to be relevant. Our research needs need to be targeted in the needed, promising, and fundable areas. And our applications need to be suited to today's problems. So one way to help meet that goal, to ensure that we have strong two-way communication between industry and society, is to set up a committee that allows us to bring in industry leaders and have conversations. Now, as I said, the committee is brand new, so we've only just begun our work. To date, we've reached out to other societies that have industry advisory boards, or IABs. to learn from them how they operate, how they get the best value from such a committee. And we've used that to develop a set of operating rules that will help us govern the way in which we operate. And we started to think about people who might be good industry representatives to recruit for the board. So we're not necessarily interested in people who are already in the society. We're looking for people who would be open to human factors work. And we're trying to reach out beyond our current membership to get people who are new, to get them involved and excited about doing HFE work. Now, we haven't reached out to anyone yet, and we won't do that until we have a clear message about how we'll meet our goal of ensuring those transparent two-way communications and the best way of translating our research results into practical applications that will make the value of HFE clear to our board members. I'm really excited to see where the committee takes us. If you have any experience with industrial advisory boards, we'd love to hear from you about those experiences. But other than that, right now, we're not necessarily looking for volunteers since we're just trying to get up off the ground. So with that, I will turn it back to Nick, who will move us, I think, into Q&A.
Yeah, thank you, and thank everyone so much for the overview of various ways in which HFES is reaching out. I know I learned a few things, and hope that there are many more that are watching that have learned something as well. I think, yeah, like you said, now we'll go ahead and open it up to live questions. As a reminder, no matter where you're watching or listening, drop your comments in the chat or in the comment section, and we'll see them on our end. So let us know what questions you have. With that, I'll go ahead and bring up the entire panel now. So that way we can all have a wonderful discussion. And if I drop out, everyone can be available. Okay. I do have the first question here from Wayne. And Carolyn, I'm going to direct this one to you. Wayne writes, greetings, folks. Recently heard about the collaboration between the IISE Applied Ergo Society and HFES. Wondering if someone can comment on that. Thanks.
Yeah, Wayne, thanks so much for that question. We are super excited about the MOU that was just drafted and approved between the two organizations. So, Gary Allred, who's a member of HFES, and also now I believe now with their meeting that they just had, that he's now the president of the AES, and he and Tom Albin have been working very hard on that MOU and bringing that to the two organizations. And now that we have it in place, Tom Rawl, who is also I saw in the on here today. Tom is one of our liaisons between AES and HFES. And these guys are already doing some really neat stuff, working with the occupational ergonomics technical group in HFES to develop some programming at the annual meeting, and also thinking about some webinars that would be of interest to members of both organizations. And also, I know that Tom, having just been at AES last week, that he was going to specifically be getting some people together at that meeting to think about some other types of activities that would provide benefit to members of both organizations. So we are super, super excited about that that new relationship, as well as some others that are, oh yes, Wayne, we will do that. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have. I'm excited about the collaboration. Great, Wayne. Thank you so much for that.
Great question, Wayne. If anybody else has any questions, please drop them in the chat. I do have a question, and maybe we can go around the horn for all of you. So one question that people might be having is, how can I get involved with these awesome efforts? So maybe we'll start kind of in the display. We'll kind of start top left, and we'll just kind of work our way around. So Deb, let's start with you. How can folks get involved with the Industrial Advisory Board if they want to do so?
So at the moment, the entire committee is myself and Andy. So if you have any desire to get involved, just reach out to me directly. And you can find my email in the directory, and I am happy to chat with you about opportunities.
All right, Mica, if folks want to get involved with the Government Relations Committee, how can people do that?
Well, we have a couple of ways. One is we have our subcommittees. We have 8 subcommittees on different topic areas, ranging from, aviation, law enforcement, occupational ergonomics, space, et cetera. So we have experts on those policies who help to form or on those subcommittees who help to form our policies, as well as acting as quick groups for quick response to legislation that comes out. The best way, though, to get involved is as a Science Policy Fellow. And the Science Policy Fellow program we created a few years back, and that selects 3 to 5 people each year. And they come in and work for a year on the GRC. They participate in the meetings. They really learn how to do outreach. They go to a Capitol Hill day to meet with legislators. We've had to postpone those the last couple of years because of COVID, but we hope to reinstate that this year. And they really learn how to do government outreach and to translate our science into policy, which is a whole nother layer of abstraction. So it's a great program. Then they work on programs of interest to themselves for like a 2-year individual project that could be tailored to their particular interest area, whether it be healthcare or aviation or transportation or whatever their topic of interest is. Our human readiness level standard, for instance, came out of one of those efforts. We did an update to our automated vehicle policy statement, was another one of our Science Policy Fellow programs. So it's a great opportunity, and an announcement should be coming out for that very soon in the bulletin to apply for that program for the upcoming year.
Thank you. And Blake, if folks want to get involved with like the wider outreach division, the wider committees, how can they do so, and what kind of things are available for people to volunteer for?
Yeah, great question. The first thing I'd recommend is, visit the web page, and under the committees section, you can learn a little bit more about each of the 9 different committees within the outreach division. You can also look and learn about the other committees that are there. The other thing is you're able to see who are members of each of those committees. So if there's a particular group of person or background of person you're looking to work with, you can check that out as well. And if there's something that you don't see, but you're still willing to participate in a committee, you can always reach out to myself, and I can provide you with a little bit more detail, and hopefully we can find the right home for you.
Thanks, Blake. Gary, Public Outreach Committee, how can folks get involved?
Get off of mute. There we go. All right. It's like everybody has been saying, reach out to us either individually or reach out through, I think, info at HFES. And, particularly with public outreach, people have some great ideas like, oh man, I wish that, HFES was here, or these people don't know anything about human factors engineering and ergonomics. They need to have something. Just send us a note. Say, listen, man, this is a great opportunity. Be glad to, either chat with you, and more than likely say, hey, listen, I'll put you in charge of that effort. Move it along.
Yeah, and just as kind of a general note here, if anybody has any questions about volunteering in general, or if they want to get involved but don't know how, you can send an email over to info@hfes.org. It's a great way to start that line of with the folks for HFES. I do have a question here from Rose about the Industrial Advisory Board. The question is, would you consider having a balance of not only recruiting outsiders or new members, but also inviting some current members from industry so they can provide some context? Deb, I'm going to pass this one over to you.
Yeah, absolutely, Rose. Thanks for the question. I was not involved in the original thinking about this, but I believe that the goal would be to have all the actual board members be from outside the society, and then bring people in from the society to meet with them periodically, so that when they meet, the people wouldn't necessarily be on the board, but they would be meeting with them to kind of tell them a little bit about what we're doing and how we connect to their industries and all that sort of thing. So we definitely want to get those two-way communications going. But I certainly will take that thought back about whether it makes sense to put HFES members on the board itself. And we'll certainly think about it.
Thank you for that answer, Deb. There's another one here from Osiris. More general question here. I hope everyone is safe and continue to succeed. What are some of the great advices for those who are looking to pursue a career in human factors engineering, primarily ergonomics? What are some materials and or certifications to help support the development of future ergonomists?
So, Nick, I can grab this one.
Please do.
So, Cyrus, great question. You know, going down the path of, in this case, becoming an ergonomist is a very righteous one from my perspective, because I sit on the physical side of the house with ergonomics. There are a lot of opportunities to pursue. You can go from certifications, for example, a certified ergonomist or a CPE, professional ergonomist, is one opportunity. You can do degrees. I mentioned at the top of the hour, looking at bachelor's degrees, looking at graduate degrees. There are lots of opportunities for university systems. Those are good ways to do it. Other ways to do it, like I came up shadowing ergonomists, so finding mentors just to see what they do and understand what the science entails. That way you can start getting your feet wet there. And then when you get into the school system or a certificate program, those are other options that you can get more involved with. And of course, you always kind of want to know where you'd like to be, a destination point. So if you have areas that you'd like to work in, maybe industry destinations, consulting destinations, start looking at what they do. That way you can prepare yourself through your schooling side for those potential jobs.
Yeah, great answer, Chris. Let's see here. Anyone want to take this question on pandemic response and preparedness?
Yeah, I can take that. So this is a really interesting topic that came up. And during the pandemic, of course, there was a lot of attention to things like availability of masks for healthcare workers or respiratory equipment, things like that, and lack of stockpiles. So a lot of focus went on things like that. But we also saw a lot of challenges as the healthcare system came under stress with being able to adapt and scale up to a lot of the challenges that were going on there. So our science policy fellows, who were all involved in the healthcare industry, actually leapt into action really fast. They were able to gather data on what was going on within healthcare organizations, particularly in the early days of the pandemic, as they were stressed in being able to perform adequately under the surge that they had. And they formed a number of, they surveyed the industry and were able to form some rapid responses to provide inputs. And so, for example, some of the inputs that we focused on were really looking at things like investing in human factors and ergonomics research programs and policies so that we can improve the overall resiliency of healthcare systems during these types of surge events like pandemics and other kinds of public health crises. That's where you really started to see things come apart at the seams. And there were everything from whether that equipment properly fit people, the range of equipment that was available, the communication systems that completely fell apart where people didn't know what to do as procedures changed very rapidly, a number of issues like that. And so our inputs back to the government have really focused on things like focusing on the usability of new processes, equipment and procedures, and work design that kind of got overlooked while we were in that crisis mode. We now need to focus on those things to improve the resiliency of the healthcare system and to increase funding at looking at some of the human factors improvements that'll make it adaptable in advance for future surge events. And those types of focus are in everything from home-based care, telehealth, electronic health records, direct pandemic preparedness for things like dealing with workload and fatigue, design of protective equipment, dealing with provider wellness, preventing burnout, public health measures, things like methods and tools for improving public compliance with healthcare recommendations, and a variety of areas like that. So they're very broad-based recommendations that went back and how we could better prepare for pandemics in future.
Thank you. So I do have a question. Selfishly, you know, one of my sort of main interests in hosting a Human Factors podcast is reaching a younger demographic and sort of generating some excitement around the field. You know, Gary, I want to ask you a question here. Can you talk a little bit about how we can get young people involved and maybe talk a little bit more about that DC event, how many people were reached there?
Yeah, Nick, that's one of our passions among the public outreach, and probably, we should be, looking at some of the other age groups that we are really passionate about this this younger generation. Well, at the STEM event in DC, there's about over a 3-day period, about 300,000 people that attend the event, and I would say several thousand come by the booth. And it's a great opportunity. We have hands-on demonstrations. We talk about everything from how human factors works to designing an experiment. And I'm gonna turn it to Deb just a little bit, because Deb's students from George Mason, when she was there, were just fantastic. And just sort of a short anecdote, this is a huge event. There's probably several hundred exhibitors. They have simulations, they have exoskeletons, they have incredible amount of information. And we were hands-on with a group, and this young lady, she was probably about 12. She said, "You know what? Yours was the best booth I attended." And Deb, I'll turn it to you. Oh, you're on mute.
Thank you. It is amazing what impact this has. The very first time we did it, we were on the mall outside, but we managed to bring a PlayStation 2, and we had people who were driving a driving simulator, and we had a cell phone ring, and they got distracted and almost always ran off the road. And we had all these teenagers who were sure that they could drive and text at the same time. And they were all shocked at how it didn't work. But what was most amazing to me was that there was a judge who came through and saw that and asked for our students to come in and give those demos in high schools and sometimes in court before they got their license, to let them know how dangerous this was based on this outreach. So it's amazingly impactful to show young children how much we can do by knowing about human factors.
Great answers. I love seeing young people engaged. I think we have time for one more question, so we'll go ahead and ask this one by Christy. Want to bring up sort of the relationship to UX. Love the outreach to industry. In industry, there are a lot of research scientists, but there are also tons of UX researchers, myself included. Is this a group that we can actively try to engage with or bring into HFES, and sort of what are those efforts? I think, do we want to bring this one over to Carolyn?
Yeah, so thanks, Nick, and thanks, Christy, for the question. This is a real passion in terms of Rebecca Greer, who's one of our EC members at large, and we certainly do have a technical group, usability and systems evaluation technical group. So the usability is a long time piece of human factors and ergonomics. But to Christy's point and Rebecca's concern, that there does seem to be a split, and I think that we definitely want to make more of a concerted effort. At the annual meeting, we always have a usability day on Wednesday where we focus on this. But again, that's more internal and people who know about it. But I think more concerted efforts and thinking about how do we do this? What is the strategy? What would be successful? I think one piece of that would be thinking about who we would invite to the IAB, and having a member or more than one member on there from an organization that is very focused on UX would be one way to do that. But it needs a multi-pronged strategy for sure. And I'd love to have any of our other folks weigh in on this as well with your ideas.
Yeah, Carolyn, this is Carissa. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The IAB is one avenue. Some of the other avenues that we've been looking at are training courses. I know, for example, our membership committee is also looking into that to see some crossover opportunity for training folks in UX. On ErgoX this year, one of the new chairs that we brought in is Kay Stanley. Kay Stanley is a National Academies member. She is creating her own track, her own program in ErgoX on extended reality technologies such as virtual reality, augmented mixed reality, things like that. And so she's also representing that user experience community and infusing that into the program of ErgoX. So there's different tacks that we're taking. Like Carolyn said, listening and learning. Nick mentioned he's part of the UX community, bring together focus groups. We're trying to be as inclusive as possible to all of the different fields of HFE. So thank you.
Excellent question to end on. That's going to be it for today, everyone. We sincerely hope that you enjoyed this town hall discussion today. If you like this, we invite you to join us next time for our next quarterly town hall. As a reminder, there is a link to a survey in the description so that you can let us know how we did today and what you might want to hear from us in the future. I want to thank all the distinguished panelists and everyone else on the HFES side of the house for making this happen. You can always find the latest from HFES at hfes.org. We encourage you to join the HFES LinkedIn group, or, you know what, take a look at those HFES bulletins in your emails. You can keep up to date with some of the society news. As for me, I've been your moderator, Nick Roome. You can find me on Human Factors Cast, our weekly podcast, where we talk about the latest news from around the human factors world. You can also find me across social media at Nick_Roome. Thanks again for tuning into the town hall. You know what, everyone on the line, I love to end my regular show with "It Depends," because in human factors, it's, you know, kind of the de facto answer for everything. And truthfully, hearing you all say "it depends" in unison would absolutely make my day, especially after all these internet issues. I've never heard 7 people say it at the same time. Would you all join me in signing off this little tagline? I'll count down from 3, and then on, we'll say 3, 2, 1, and then it. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. It depends. Fantastic. Thank you, everyone.